So now I want to, I guess, tell you how I got to where I got, why I believe what I believe, and what I do. And this is one of Jesus' teachings that I personally believe. I believe all of them are ignored, but I believe this one is the most ignored teaching of Jesus. So, and I don't judge anybody. This is what I believe. So I'm going to obey Jesus and strive to live it out. So a lot of this I'm just going to be reading because I'm not a preacher. So I believe that helping those in need, whether it be our brothers and sisters in Christ, or a stranger on the street, or even our enemy, I believe this is a lifestyle that we should be living. I believe this is essential to our faith because Jesus teaches that. And I believe it has to come from love. You know, in Romans 12, Paul says, don't pretend to love, really love people. You know, we love our families. We ought to love people like we love our families. So how long do I have? You want me to cut this short? Well, I was going to read some Bible passages, but I can just. An hour? Is there every?
Somebody needs to leave, they can, but
okay.
If it goes too much longer an hour, maybe it'll be a little longer.
It won't go. I can get it done in an hour. I'll try to be fast. Okay. So it all starts right here, and I'm sure every one of you have heard these passages many times. But when I was putting this together, and I put all these passages, when I put them all together, and I read through them, it overwhelmed me. It convicted me more than I've ever been convicted. So if I can, and this isn't even all of them, this isn't even close to all of them, but if I could just read these all and put them all together and magnify what Jesus said into this big picture, okay, so 1 John 4:20, if anyone says, I love God and hate his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, who he has seen, how can he love God, who he has not seen? So we love because he first loved us. John 4:19. This is where it all starts. Matthew 22:37 through 39. When Jesus was asked, what was the great commandment? He replied, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments, this is the key right here, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Romans 13, 8 through 10, Paul explains to us why we obey the commandments. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not covet. If there is any other commandment, it is summed up in this saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to your neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. The way I see it is it's God doesn't just give us a bunch of rules. He gives us reasons behind the rules. And the reasons are so we can learn what the heart of God is, so we can write it on our heart. This is the way I explain this when I'm on the streets talking to the homeless. And they come up and they ask me, isn't the Bible just full of a bunch of rules? So this is I guess a simple common sense way that I explain it. So I'll say to him, if I love my neighbor, I'm not going to steal from my neighbor. Okay, there's a commandment. If I love my neighbor, I'm not going to lie to my neighbor. If I love my neighbor, I'm not going to covet what he has. If I love my neighbor and my neighbor is hungry, I'm going to help this person. Or we can reverse it. Luke 6:31, Matthew 7:12, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I wouldn't want my neighbor to steal from me or harm me or lie to me. So why would I do any of these things to my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? It's everyone. International, worldwide. If someone is in need somewhere in the world, they're my neighbor. And if I have the means, I am obligated to help them as a Christian, if at all possible. And trust me, when you ask God to find you people to help, He's going to overwhelm you, because He will find you as many people to help as you can handle. And Romans 12, Paul says to even feed your enemy if he is hungry. So this excludes nobody. We are to love all people, and love is an action. It's not just a feeling, it is an action. If I have compassion, if I'm kind, if I have mercy on others, if I love others, it's always followed by action. So as everyone knows, most of the world lives in poverty. Lack of food, unsanitary water, lack of medical care, lack of decent shelter, clothes, sicknesses, diseases, not to mention human trafficking. I mean, the list goes on and on. The needs go on and on. The world is a mess, and it is my obligation as a Christian, I believe it is our obligation, to love these people, to help these people. And we're used to using words like statistics. But really, these statistics are real people. They're flesh and blood. I try to imagine my son, my 10-year-old son, 11 now, sitting over in some third world nation, hungry, or naked, or needs medical attention. Would I do everything in my power to help him? And if I would, am I playing favoritism with my own family? If I can help him, why wouldn't I help all the other hungry children? Or people on my streets in my town, you know. So that's the way I look at it. So I'm going to go through some Bible passages, and I want to show you, which I know you already know, but maybe magnify it with them all together, what Jesus teaches about giving to the poor. I want to say, there's a pastor, I like a lot of his sermons. His name is John D. Martin. And he quoted something. And anyway, I wrote this quote. And when I get up in the morning, I read it every day. It's my indulgence. What I spend my money on, me, the one that claims to die to self. My hobbies, my whatever. My indulgence is another person's suffering. So when I go to McDonald's, if I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I'm there all day long, and I'm hungry, but I could wait a couple more hours and eat when I get home, and I go spend $10 at McDonald's, that's 40 meals. I could have fed 40 kids in Liberia if I'd have just waited a couple more hours. And I don't always do that, but I believe that's the heart of God. That's the hearts that we need to have, is how can I die more to myself and live more for others? So, all right. So I'm going to go through these Bible passages, and then I can tell you a little bit about Liberia, and you can ask me whatever you like. And Deuteronomy 15:7. If among you one of your brothers should become poor in any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. Proverbs 31:8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Psalm 41:1. Blessed is the one who considers the poor. In the day of trouble, for the Lord delivers him. Deuteronomy 15:11. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land. Proverbs 14:21. Whoever despises his brother is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. Proverbs 14:31. Whoever oppresses the poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him his deed. Proverbs 22:9. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Proverbs 22:16. Whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. 1 Timothy 6:18. Then they are to the good to be rich in good works and generous and ready to share. James 2:14 through 17. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warmed and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? Also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. And then he continues and he says, I'll show you my faith by my works. And whenever I read I like to read the early Christians, the ante-Nicene fathers. Whenever I read them and they talk about good works, it is almost always referring to helping someone in need. Romans 12:13. Supply your need to the saints, extend hospitality to strangers. Hebrews 13:6. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for the sacrifices are pleasing to God. Luke 3:10 and 11. And the people asked him, saying, What shall we do then? And he answered and said to them, He has 2 coats, give to him who has none, and he also has no food. Let him do likewise. Matthew 5:42. Give to him who asks you for something. Do not turn anyone away who wants to borrow from you. 1 John 3:17 and 18. Whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? Jeremiah 22:16. He judged the cause of the poor and needy. Then it was well. Was that not knowing me, says the Lord? Isaiah 58:5 through 7. Is this not the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bonds of the wicked, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke, Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring your house to the poor who are cast out? When you see the naked, that you cover him and not hide yourself from its own flesh? Isaiah 41:17. The poor and needy seek water, but there is none. Their tongues fail to thirst. I, the Lord, will hear them, and I, God of Israel, will not forsake them. When I hear that, I, God, will help them, I think of us. We are God's ambassadors. We are the feet of Jesus. We are the hands of Jesus. So when we help others, it's coming from God. You know, when I help people overseas and they thank me, I always tell them, please don't thank me. This isn't from me. Everything comes from God. I own nothing. None of this is mine. I'm just the messenger transporting the goods or whatever. So, but I always saw that passage as this is how God works. It's through us. Isaiah 1:17, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 58:10, if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and the darkness shall be as noonday. Psalm 82:3-4. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hands of the wicked. Psalm 140:12. I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted and justice for the poor. James 1:17. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Proverbs 21:13. Whoever shut his ears to the cry of the poor will also cry himself and not be heard. That passage scares me. Ezekiel 16:49. Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, fullness of food and abundance of idleness. Neither did they strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. Proverbs 29:7. The righteous consider the cause of the poor, but the wicked regardeth nothing to know it. Proverbs 19:17. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what is given. 1 Timothy 6:18. Command them to do good, be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Proverbs 28:27. Whoever gives to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to poverty will be cursed. Luke 14:12-14. When you give a dinner or supper, do not invite your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back, and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. So as John D. Martin says, when we live this way, we're really building up our 401k in heaven, not on earth. Matthew 19:21. If you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Matthew 6:19 and 20. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth or rust destroys, or where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, or where thieves do not break in or steal. Luke 12:33 and 34. Sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourself money bags which do not grow old, a treasure in the heaven that does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Luke 14:33. So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions. There are so many more, but this teaching of Jesus, this lifestyle that he gives us is so prevalent that I just had to read them together. The early church, when Jesus said, give it all up, come follow me, the early church, they showed us that they did that in the book of Acts. Acts 2:44 and 45. And all those who believed were together, and they had all things in common, and they began selling their property and their possessions, and were sharing them with all, as one might have need. Now, for me, I believe we can obey this in our heart. Forsaking all, what's mine is yours. You know, I don't believe that we all have to throw all our money in a pot. I don't think that's what this is saying, but I strongly believe that if I have the means and someone is in need, I cannot do anything. So, Mark 12:41, 44, the poor widow gave 2 coins, and I'm paraphrasing, so trying to shorten them. The rich put in their large amounts. Jesus said, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more money into the treasure than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, and she gave out of her poverty. It's another example of, forsaking all. Matthew 25:31 through 46. This is my favorite passage in the Bible, yet the scariest passage in the Bible, I believe. If you're not walking and living Jesus' commandments out, I believe this. I can't even explain it. How can it be my favorite and my most feared, but it is. Matthew 25:31 through 46. When the Son of Man came in all his glory, and the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. all the nations or peoples will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one another as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep to his right hand and the goats to his left. Then the king will say to those on the right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer them, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and came to you?" And the king will answer to them and say, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." We are the hands and the feet of Jesus. Then he will say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also answered them, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me." And these will go away into everlasting, the least of these, and you did not do it to me. And these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Brother Dwayne was talking about angels, how we might be entertaining angels, we just don't know, and I think of that a lot when I'm out on the streets, and this could be an angel. I don't know, and I do think God tests us to see if we will love others and take action. And in this same statement, Jesus is saying, if you're not helping my brothers and sisters, it's as if you're not helping me. And so whether we're thinking we're entertaining angels or we're being the hands of Jesus, Jesus teaches us how to love God and how to love people, and we are His feet. So I just got a few quotes I want to read they're sobering quotes from some Christians throughout history, and that go along with what Jesus said, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Liberia, and you can ask questions. John Christensen said, "When you are weary of praying and do not receive, consider how often you have heard a poor man's calling and you have not listened to him." I thought that was pretty sobering. Aristides, I don't know how to pronounce this, Aristides. Christians love one another. They do not overlook the widows, and they save the orphan. The one who has ministers ungrudgingly to the one who does not have. When they see a stranger, they take him in under their roof and rejoice over them as a true brother. For they do not call themselves brothers according to the flesh, but according to the soul. Clement of Rome. Let the strong take care of the weak. Let the weak respect the strong. Let the rich man minister to the poor man. Let the poor man give thanks to God that he gave him one through whom his need might be satisfied. Another one from John Christensen. The rich are in the possession of the goods of the poor, even if they have acquired them honestly or inherited them legally. Here's one from the Didache, which was read earlier. Share everything with your brothers. Do not say it is private property. If you share what is everlasting, you should be that much more willing to share things with what does not last. Irenaeus. Instead of the tithes which the law command, the Lord said to divide everything we have with the poor. And he said to love not only your neighbors, but also your enemies, and be givers and sharers, not only with those with the good, but also be givers towards those who take away your possessions. I'll just read a couple more. This is John Wesley. John Wesley is one of my heroes. I might not have agreed with everything he taught, but his lifestyle is what I want to model my lifestyle after him. So John Wesley, there's a lot said about him. He's got a lot of quotes that I really put on my heart. But this one, he says, when I die, if I leave behind me 10 pounds, I don't know what 10 pounds is, $10? It's a small amount of money. If I leave behind me 10 pounds, you and all mankind may bear witness against me that I have lived and died a thief and a robber. And I know why he says this, because in one of John D. Martin's sermons, he's talking about John Wesley. One time he bought some pictures to put on his wall and used up the rest of whatever he had in his pocket. Well, then he met a young girl. She didn't have a coat, and it was cold, and he couldn't help her. And he always looked at those pictures as blood money. He spent it on himself, and he could have used that money to help someone. So I know exactly what he's saying. This is the heart I want. This is the heart I believe God wants me to have towards others. Here's another one by Cyprian, that this one is really sobering. Because this is pretty much what all the early church believed. And you see how much things have changed. So this is Cyprian. This is the last one, and then I'll go into Liberia. Christians used to sell houses and estates so they might lay up for themselves treasures in heaven. They presented the proceeds from them to the apostles, to be distributed for the use of the poor. However, and I think this is what, in the 200s, Brett? Yeah. This is already just 200s. However, now, in the 200s, we do not even give a tenth of our patrimony. And while our Lord bids us to sell, we rather buy and increase our store. Thus has the vigor of faith dwindled away among us. Thus has the strength of believers grown weak. And therefore, the Lord, looking to our days, says in his gospel, when the Son of Man comes, do you think he will find faith on this earth? We see that what he has foretold has come to pass. So he's saying it's already come to pass, and that's year 200. 200s. The question is, do we have the heart for God? Do we have the heart for people? Do we love God? Do we love people? And if we do, then the next question is, what are we going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I don't believe in good intentions. If Jesus tells me to do something, I believe I need to do it. And when he did that, I just jumped in and did it. And it was awkward, and it was weird, and it was hard. Some of the things, give up your possessions. My gun, I was a gun guy. I was a big guy. I collected high-end World War. I had a huge collection of guns. And Jesus is telling me to love my enemy? That was hard, to give up my guns. It was a process. And, I mean, I still hunt. But for the most part, these things are hard. Jesus said, narrow is the gate, difficult is the way. And I read Hermas. I like to read the early Christians. Shepherd of Hermas. They're going through the mandates, going through all the commandments. And Hermas says to the shepherd, he's just bewildered. He's like, how is it possible for man to obey all these commandments? And the shepherd says, if you believe it is impossible to obey these commands, then it will be. So I just believe Jesus. And he said, if you obey me and you trust me, I'll take care of you. And I always thought, people will always say, what are you going to do if you can't work anymore? I said, I don't know. I'll trust in God. Maybe he'll keep me alive. Maybe I'll live in a dumpster. I really don't know. I don't care. But I'm going to obey Jesus, and I'm going to trust in him. So that's what I believe on this topic and why I believe it, partially. So Liberia is one of the places that we're helping. We've got a few people. It was my wife and I to start, and we kind of met with about 9 different organizations, and every organization I always kind of test out. I'd say, can you give me some pastors from the U.S. or give me something, so I see, because there's a lot of scams. So most of these organizations I checked out, and I talked to pastors and missionaries, and then we decided to narrow it down to just 1 or 2, because give a little bit here and a little bit there, and it doesn't amount much. So we decided to give larger amounts to just 1 or 2. So we stuck with Liberia, and we stuck with Kenya and Liberia. So so anyway, Liberia, I went there a few years ago. I saw the school. I met everybody. Got to know what their needs were. Just got information. Liberia is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's one of the, I believe Africa has the 20 poorest countries in the world. Matter of fact, I was in the Philippines a couple years before that. Philippines this is 5-6 years ago, they were the 78th poorest country in the world. And when I was there, it broke my heart to see the way people live, and to see the church, other Christians doing nothing. I just never understood it. And I'm thinking, this is the 78th poorest country, so there's 77 poorer countries than this? And I work with the homeless on a regular basis, and that's a whole nother ball game. It's 2 different things. But when I was in the Philippines, we bought some big bags of rice, I don't know, 100 pounds, 200 pounds, they were big bags of rice, and we filled up as many 2-pound bags of rice as we could. And then we bought a little bitty can of sardines. I mean, it's like 2 bites, it's gone. And we were in this little housing area, and it was this little skinny alley, and you could see probably almost a mile down this alley. And we sent the kids out, and we said, go tell the neighbors, we're going to give out rice. Waited about 15, 20 minutes, and someone said they're here. And I looked out the door. I could not see the end of the line for rice. I couldn't do that in America. If I went out on the streets in America and I was giving out free rice, I don't think I'd get 1 or 2 people. This is how poor most of the world is. So back to Liberia. Liberia, in 1989, they started a civil war. Nobody really knows why. I tried asking, and nobody really knows. It's just, they just started killing each other. Anybody and everything. So people were dispersed and in hiding. And this lasted, it lasted so many years, and then there was a break, and then it formed again, and from what I understand, it lasted till like 2003. So that was a pretty long civil war. And when you go through the city, the buildings, a lot of the buildings look like, if you see pictures of Germany in World War II, where they're just destroyed with bullets and bombs and whatever, that's what a lot of the city looks like. More than 200,000 people died. This civil war that's been over since 2003 has destroyed the economy. Not that they weren't poor already, but it has destroyed the economy to another level, and the country's never come back. And I asked them, I go, where are all these people that were killing others? And we were walking through the neighborhood, and there's people all around us, and they said, it's all of us. They're all among us. It's everyone along here. You're meeting these people. You're meeting victims. You're meeting the killers. And I said, what made the war stop? And they said, we just got sick of killing each other. So the war ended, and they are some of the most, thank you, brother. They are some of the most, even the Muslims there's a lot of Muslims, just the people of Liberia are some of the most content, kind, loving, compassionate people I've ever met. It's just that some of them don't have Christ. But if you were just to look at their lives, I mean, we could go to Africa and we could learn a lot from these Christians about contentment and humility. So next came Ebola, and this is kind of the reason for the school. 2014 and 15, the Ebola outbreak comes along and just slaughters people. And this was very contagious. If you were near anybody with Ebola, you probably got it and you had a good chance of dying. As a matter of fact, most of the pastors in Liberia at that time would go and sit and pray with the sick, get sick, and they would die. That's loving your neighbor. That's the humility we can learn from Reverend Che. He's the one who has this school. He unfortunately did not die, but he was right there with all the other pastors. They were not afraid of the sickness. They weren't afraid of catching anything, dying. So Ebola came and it went, and now you've got thousands of parents that died, and you have thousands of orphans, thousands more orphans. So this little bitty church of about 50 people, 90% of this church are unemployed. So 10% of them are actually working, and the ones that are working, they don't make any money. There's no money in Liberia. So this little church decides to start a school for the orphans of these people that died from Ebola. And when I had met them, I don't know what they started out with, but when I met them, we had 80 kids. And so we started helping them, and about the time that Prior to the time we went, not too long before I went there, we started feeding the kids. And full capacity at the school is 80 kids, by the way. So we bought rubber bowls and rubber forks so we could rewash them. We got the big pots for cooking the food, and we got everything we needed, and we started feeding the kids. We jumped from 80 kids to 300 kids literally almost overnight. And I think I meant, I don't know if I meant, maybe I'm talking, anyway, I'll say it again. 30% of these kids, of these 300 kids, so that means 100 kids, come from Muslim families. So they're coming to get a meal, they're coming to get an education, and they're coming to hear the gospel. The Muslim families, I'm sure, are not sending them there to hear the gospel, but because they are so poor there, it's a free education. Most families in Liberia, schools cost between $100 and $110 per year per kid. When you think most families have anywhere from 3 to 10 kids, and most families make just a few dollars a day. A lot of families make $500, $600, $700 a year. That they can't afford to send them to school because whatever income they have has to go for their own needs. So this school we're supplying, we pay for their tuition, their uniforms. Their uniforms are mandated by the government. Matter of fact, we started without uniforms, and Justin is my brother who takes care of everything. He helps run the school. He organizes. He calls me and he says, the government wants to shut down the school. And I'm like, okay, why? And he says, because we have no uniforms and they're mandatory. I'm like, okay, we'll get uniforms. I go, what's it going to cost? He did the figures, and this is having them made. This isn't even ordering them. Came to about $15 each. It came to almost $3,000. And I'm like, I don't have $3,000. What am I going to do? So I said, you know what? I'll pray on it. We'll trust in God. Well, I get a call the next week. My wife and I, we clean these units. I'm a custodian, by the way. We clean these units on the side once a year for the UAF. They wanted it done twice this year, and we do them. It takes us 2 weeks, and we get a pretty good chunk of money. So when there's big things like this, God provides, and God provided at the right time because they were going to shut the school down. So so I have no doubt. I don't know where, I can't begin to think of what God's will is other than I know the needs of the school. And I just take it day by day, and I help with what means I have. I've got a couple brothers back home that help with Liberia and Kenya, and the streets for that matter. So I used to try to get help from other churches. You know, we sent emails to, I can't even tell you how many churches. And we just kind of gave up because we just, nobody was interested. So I thought, well, we're on our own and God's behind us and that's all we can do. So have you been going through these? Okay, so these are the kids. Some of them got uniforms, some don't. I've got, you can kind of see with their housing how they live. If if a house like theirs was in America, it would be condemned, and yet they're living in them. The floors are dirt. These pictures here, this is Reverend Che, and then there'll be someone with a bowl of rice. This is their kitchen. They serve the food here. It's got a dirt floor. They got these big pots. They build these little fires and cook the rice and the gravy. But all those people there, when COVID happened, that was another thing, COVID. Because of COVID, the government made them shut the school down, which meant the kids weren't getting fed. So we couldn't just go to their homes and feed them, so we had to come up with the money to feed each kid's whole family, just to be fair. So we, with all the pictures of the people that you see with a big bucket of rice, a bowl of rice, that's what that was. We bought rice and oil, and we were doing beans, but beans got too expensive. We figured we could stretch it more with just rice, so, and feed more people. So, so yeah, that's what that is. That's COVID, and so now COVID's all kind of done and over with. We're back to our regular meals, and we don't feed them every day. We feed them only a couple times a week. I want to be feeding them every day, but financially, we can't. There's so many needs that we just do what we can, what God provides for us. Crabtree. I wish I could show video, because I've got some videos that would break your heart. It really magnifies the way they live. Crabtree is a neighborhood close to where the church was. And when you look at the ground, there's these little creeks and ponds and rivers. And you look at the water and the ground, you can't even hardly see the dirt because it's so full of garbage and feces. And I've got a video where I show the whole thing. I kind of just turn around, and you can see the filth that the people live in. And then there's this kid with this net, and he's trying to catch a little fish in this scummy water, this just puddle almost, just for something to eat. And he never caught one. But that's the way they live in Liberia. And from what I understand, what they tell me is the rural areas are even worse. And we're in the city. We're in Monrovia, which is about 1 million people. So I can't even imagine what they go through out in the country. So this is one of the things we are helping with and need help with. One of our goals is to feed them every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Goal is transportation for the teachers because Monrovia is such a big city that transportation is $2 or $3 to get across the city, but $2 or $3 to someone in Liberia is a whole day's wage. So we're working on getting them taxis, and I don't know if do we have a picture of one of their motorcycles up here? Oh, it looks like a little golf cart, and we're almost, with some help from friends in Fairbanks, I should be able to send the last amount of money when I get back on Tuesday to purchase the first motorcycle, which it's got like 3 seats in the back, like a bench seat, and then a single seat in the front, and they can use it as a taxi. They can transport the teachers, they can use it to employ someone, and then we started a savings account through the church, and we're looking at a business to start for the school to help them be more self-sufficient. So we're thinking maybe getting another motorcycle, another taxi, employ someone else, and that money can go back in. So, but who knows, maybe that'll change. What's that? Oh, the motorcycle, yeah, it's $3,500, and that's brand new. So we're sending them $4,000, and that'll cover the motorcycle, insurance, registration, all that stuff to get started. And then we'll see how it goes. And then we're about halfway there in our savings to purchase another one. And from what I was looking at different options for businesses to make them more self-sufficient. This last year I started a business for a brother in Kenya who has his boys making mud bricks, and I bought him the tools and whatever he needs to start the business. And he made over 10,000 bricks this summer. So that business worked out great for him. So I thought, I can bring that to Liberia. Why don't we just make mud bricks? Well, they don't make mud bricks in Liberia, they make cement bricks. And to start a cement business is way more money than I got. So that's off the table. So I'm like, what about a food market? We could start like a super food market in your neighborhood. We could have fish and vegetables and everything in between. The neighbors will buy from you, and it'll go back into the school because the school is helping their kids. But markets don't make that much money. So right now we're at transportation because hardly anybody owns cars there. Everybody uses taxis, and most taxis are motorcycles. Most taxis I used that I was on are regular. We'd have like 3 or 4 people on a regular motorcycle. That's, I thought I was gonna die. And it was very uncomfortable, but they do have 3-wheel motorcycles, like, I can't remember what they're called. I do got pictures if anybody that wants to look at them. So anyway, that's the plan for that. Tuesday they should be able to purchase their first one. The government's very corrupt, just like every other third world country. my issue with people who want to help. And I'm not soliciting anything here. I hope that whatever I read in God's Word edifies everyone in this room to want to help somebody. If it's Liberia, awesome. If it's someone else, awesome. So, but whenever anyone says, oh yeah, I'll help, I'll give you such and such, or I'll be a regular donor or whatever, I always urge them to go, before you give a dime, go see what they're like. See with your own eyes how they live. They're our brothers and sisters in Christ. They're not numbers that we just deposit a check to. Go see how they live. It'll change. Anybody that's not been to a third world nation, it'll change your world. It'll turn your view upside down. My friend that I have Bible study with, which I still never told you that story. I got to tell you that. I'll tell you and Brett later because it's. I don't want to share it now because we're doing this. But this friend of mine, I went over all these verses that I just went over here with him, and he's what I call evangelical, maybe coming out of evangelical. So we're enjoying having fellowship with one another, and we're seeing eye to eye on a lot of stuff that he has left his church for. But anyway, I went over a lot of these same passages, and I said, look, this is what Jesus teaches about your money, your time. And then we move over here to the book of Acts, and I said, this is how they live. And then we go over here to the early Christians for about 300 years. Look, this is how they lived for the most part. And then we look through history at certain Christians, and we can see that it never went away. It never went away. It just, we always hear about the big movements, but we don't hear about the small movements. But so it's kind of funny because he was helping me in Liberia, and he knew that I was also helping in Kenya. And my brother in Kenya, he had an orphanage, he had 40 boys. His church burned down. Well, that's where the boys were staying, so he lost the boys. So they're dispersed all over the place on the streets. And he needs a building. And I can't afford to build him a building. So we went over these teachings, and we went over the book of Acts and all this. And the next week I come to Bible study. He's like, you're not going to believe this. He goes, I had a piece of land that I had forgotten about that I owned with some other people, and it got such and such money, a good chunk of money was my share. And he goes, I want to build Moses a new building. So I was so thrilled. I'm like, this could only be from God. I'm like, that is so awesome. But I said, you got to go there first. You got to go. Don't just send money. So he sent money and didn't go. But he's going in 2 weeks. He finally, boarded a flight. He's going to stop in Israel and then go to Kenya, and then it was the cheapest way to go according to his flight plan. we get really good deals through Alaska Airlines because we're residents, but sometimes they're really awkward, and you just gotta, kind of like me, I have to fly into St. Louis to get a good deal. Well, he's got to stop in Israel for a few days, and it's free, but then he pays a short amount. But anyway, but yeah, God works wonders, for sure. A few years ago, same situation with the uniforms, where we needed a big chunk of money, and they needed something big. They needed a piece of land, and preferably we needed a piece of land next to the already existing church, so we could just add on to it and not have to build a whole new building when we had the money. And there was a piece of land that was for sale, but the lady, she wanted an outrageous amount of money, and I didn't have the money, so COVID hit, and everybody's locked down, and all the country, they're all locked down, and it happened to be right at that time that we were cleaning the UAF, which means we get paid a good chunk of money again. And I talked to Justin, and I'm like, is that piece of land still for sale? And he said, yeah, but still the same price. And I had about half that money from doing the UAF. I said, go offer him this amount. I don't even remember. Maybe $3,000. I don't remember exactly, but it was a perfect, nice, big piece of land. So they offered, she accepted, but then she backed out. Then a month or so later, she accepted. So I'm like, okay, let's get this done before she changes her mind. So we got a piece of land, a vacant piece of land right next to the church, and they've been building, because we don't have a building, and it's a lot of money for a building, we've been building these temporary classrooms made out of bamboo and tarp. So when it rains and the wind comes up, they blow down, and they got to reconstruct them. But we need a building. So CAM, I don't know how many of you, I'm sure most of you are familiar with CAM. It's a Mennonite missionary organization. Since I met him, I've been teaching Jesus ways, and I wanted to get a hold of Cam because I knew Cam was there, and I thought, well, maybe they could help. So we met with Cam, and we've got some study material through another organization called Lamp and Light that the whole congregation went through, and they finished it up about a year and a half ago. So that's been a blessing, but I wish we could keep doing something like that. And that's why I can't, if I could go there, if I could live there, I would move. But if I could go once a year, I would go, but I can't. I can't afford it. I'm a janitor at a school. I don't make that much money. But if a church got involved and they could send people once in a while to assess and to teach, to be there face to face, that would be awesome. That'd be great. So that's all I got, really. I mean, I could really go into specifics, but that's for later, you know, because we looked at, we got an estimate on what the building would cost, which I don't even remember what it is now, but uh, the needs and the goals that we have as a school, what they've envisioned themselves for the poor in their country. They're the poor helping the poor. And I want to be a part of that. So I want to be a part of helping anyone that needs help, especially my brothers and sisters. And I can tell you they're hungry for the truth. My brother Aaron, man, I send him sermons. I send him data for one, so he can get the sermons on his phone. And I've been sending him sermons from like the Sound Faith channel, Strength to Strength, and a few other channels. I send him sermons all the time. And he downloads them, so he's always got them. He just eats them up and he takes notes. And it's the same with Moses. And Moses is in Kenya. He's the one taking care of these boys. He contacted me under a different name and number or a different title, whatever, and he's like, I lost my phone, all those sermons you've sent me, they're gone. So I just had to resend them again. He goes, because I listen to them over and over and over again and take notes and learn. So these people, you know, I know there's a lot of scammers out there, and there's people that only want a handout. But there are so many people that are hungry for the Lord, and they want to know the truth. They want to know what it means to follow Christ. And we're not there yet. We're getting there. I'm not perfect. I'm the furthest thing from perfection as you'll find. But we're slowly getting there. The church was, when I met them, I would say they were as much evangelical as you'll see any other evangelical. Now, they follow Christ, they follow their commands. Their women cover their heads. Their men uncover their heads when they're praying and prophesying. They're just trying to soak in as much truth as they can so they can live it out in their lives. And for me, it's not easy because I'm working and I'm trying to teach people. I don't just come to a class and teach people. My teaching is little bits and pieces on the streets. It's in Africa. Like one time these two guys got in a fight and the guy pulled a knife and I got in the middle of them and I said, you know, Jesus says we're to love our enemy. And I started teaching Jesus, and the guy puts his knife back in his pocket and walks away. And I've broken up so many fights by doing that without using force. So many fights. And we have fights every day. It's chaotic. And when we love people, they respect that, and they know when we show them day after day, month after month, year after year, we're in their lives for good. And we show them without without any, we just show them. We're not looking for anything. We're just loving people. These people on the streets or wherever start to trust us because they don't trust Christians. They think Christians, they're out there for a conversion, and if you don't convert, they don't want nothing to do. Dust off my feet, I'm out of here. We tried. I got a friend in Oakland, California. His name is Vinny. And he was, you can actually go online and see his documentary. Someone made a documentary on him. But he went to Berkeley. He was going to Berkeley as a student. He had his financial future set out for him. He had it made. And one day he picks up the Bible and he reads it. And he's like, same with me. When I read my Bible, he looked at that Bible and he looked at Christianity all around him. And I see no resemblance. And he decided to spend his life helping the poor, helping the homeless. So for the last, I think it's been 25 years now, he's been out on the streets in Oakland he hasn't had a day off in, I think, 25 years. 25 years, gives out food, he preaches on the streets, he cleans up, he changes diapers, if you're laying on the street and you went in your pants, he picks you up off the street and he cleans you up. And he's one woman who had some kind of mental illness, bipolar, I don't know what she had, but she's very violent, very loud. She would scream at him every day, and he would go in. He got her an apartment. He'd go in and he'd clean her apartment every day. She would scream at him every day. She'd swear at him every day. She'd punch him almost every day. He said one time she punched me in the face so hard she broke her wrist. But he did it. Day after day, year after year. I think it took 4 years that he did this every day for her. And one day, something in her snapped. The hatred left. And all of a sudden, all you could see was love. And she became one of his biggest prayer warriors. There wasn't a person down there on them streets she wasn't praying for, nonstop. And she was probably in her, I think, 70s. I could be wrong. She just died last year. But I believe she's in heaven. And I believe because Vinny never gave up on her and the many other stories he has on the streets where he never gave up. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. Love God, love people. And it's an action. And so if anybody's got any questions, I'll try to answer them. Can't guarantee I'll answer them, but yeah.
Simple one. These people, they speak English?
Yeah, they speak English, but like I said, they're very simple people. If you're going to go over there and start talking theology, keep it simple. Teach it as if you're teaching your child. I think I was telling you, or who was I telling? I don't remember, but I was telling somebody today that when I was there, the pastor and I would stay up late hours at night, and he's asking me all these biblical questions, and I think we were talking about church discipline, something in church discipline. And I gave him the answer, and he's like, show me in the Bible. So So I showed him where to look, and he looked in his Bible, and he's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, and I'm looking at my Bible while he's looking at his Bible. And I'm like, what do you mean? What don't you get? He looked at my Bible, which was an easier translation, a more modern translation. He's like, oh, now I get it. So I gave him my Bible, and it's so clear to him now. And that's all the difference it makes is a translation. Some people get so gung-ho over translations, and yet we miss the message. You know, we're so into words, and we miss the big message, you know. There are Christians with every translation under the sun out there, and I don't know if there's a translation that you can't get the message. I mean, you can. There's no Bible that's perfect. Everyone is mistranslated in some way, even the King James. But you know, when I talk to them, when I teach them, I try to keep it simple. So, kind of the same thing with working with natives on the street. You know, the natives are, most of the homeless are native, Alaska natives. And they're very simple people. They don't understand technical things, you know, so. But yeah.
Yeah, I just looked up online real quick just to put things in perspective of how poor Liberia is. I think some of us are somewhat familiar with Haiti to some degree because Brother Joel is there. I looked at this article that was done that was based on World Bank's data for 2021, and they ranked Haiti as the 30th poorest country in the world. They ranked Honduras as 57 of the poorest country in the world. Liberia is number 8.